Hello and welcome to episode 23 of Retro Recall: The PS1 Chronicles, a show where we play and rank every PlayStation game ever created. My name is Jimmy, and as always, I'm here with Mike.
Hello.
And we're also joined by Kyle again this week.
Hi.
It's been a while. Last time was when we played Einhander, which was a very different game than this. Actually, looking back at the scores, I look at the scores every week to kind of like formulate where I want to put things, and definitely gave Einhander too high of a score.
You think so?
What do we give it?
You guys both gave it a 7. I gave it an 8. I think an 8 might be a little too high, but what's done is done.
It's in the past. We only look forward.
Well, like we were just talking about, I think on the last episode or the one before that, like a lot of the earlier games, like we didn't figure out our like score system yet. So there's a lot of games where I should have given lower or higher or like just been a little, like thought a little differently about it, because now when we go back to it and we're trying to fit new games into it, it feels wrong, you know?
And not even that. It's more, we didn't have the perspective in the beginning. So now that we've played bad games and now we're playing kind of good games, we now understand why they're bad and why they're good instead of just, oh, here's the first episode. So it seems like it's a good game.
So do you guys like, you know, that being said, other than Einhander, do you guys like kind of look back at some of your earlier scores and kind of wish you would have like given it a different score?
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's a few I could look at and say I maybe went too low or too high on this, but for the most part, I think I'm pretty happy with where things are sitting.
I mean, Jim, if there was like one game you had to pick that you would like change the score on.
I mean, I'll give you a few. Like, I feel like I was pretty unfair to Alone in the Dark, which I did address in the episode after that. Just because, you know, I'm not, and you'll see this today, actually, I'm not big on survival horror games. I love like the idea and the aesthetic of them, but I don't like actually playing them. So I gave that one a little bit of a harsh score. Destruction Derby, definitely rated it a little too high. But yeah, I don't know. Most of them I kind of stand by, but we've talked about doing something like either it's an episode or it's just a little video or something where we go back and kind of rearrange some things. But that's still just an idea. But yeah, I haven't played really anything besides Dino Crisis and Balatro this week. So what are you playing, Kyle?
I've been playing a Pikmin 2 mod. It's like a multiplayer mod where you can just play through the campaign with up to 4 people, I think. Pretty fun. I haven't played Pikmin since I was a kid, so it was nice to jump back into it. But then it kind of reminded me of how good of a game it actually is. And being able to like play through it with another person has just like added a whole like new like element of fun to it.
Yeah, it's a way to, you can like multitask what you're doing. Send one person one way, you go the other way to do other things.
I think that's the biggest thing is we would run into parts where like, okay, well, we need more Pikmin, but we can also be doing this. So it's like you go farm for more Pikmin and then I'm going to go take care of this. And it's like, I feel like we just overall went through the game a lot faster.
Oh yeah, yeah. The same goes for like Stardew Valley. It's a fun game on your own, but if you have 2 people, 3 people with you, you cruise through all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
Because everyone has their own jobs.
Good game, by the way. I love Stardew Valley.
Stardew Valley is not my vibe, but you know.
it's up there. It's one of my top games, I think. So
yeah, I started playing it one time and I got to the farming. I'm like, no, never mind.
You gotta go into the mines, man. That's where all the fun is. Did you see about the new update they just did for Stardew Valley?
I did not know.
One of the biggest things that I saw that I think is a game changer is they now allow you to use tents in the mines. So you don't have to like leave the mine and run all the way back home. You can just sleep in the mine in a tent and then wake up the next day. That's like completely changes everything.
That's huge. Like, especially when you're in like the skull mines, that would change everything.
Oh yeah, for sure. Cause it's like, you don't have to run all the way back and then like take the bus. So that, you know, it's like, you really have to plan out your like exit. So you're like, okay, I have this much time. I have to make it back before, I don't know if it's like 2 a.m. or something when you automatically knock out.
Right.
But it's like, okay, it's 10. We got to start going. Now it's like, okay, we can just use a tent.
I also love how like, that guy made bank on that game.
Oh, for sure.
And he's still like putting out these updates, making the game even better from when he originally updated it. Like he easily could have just walked away and started something else, but he's still supporting it.
It's good to see that, like, especially since that game's been around for a good bit. Like, and it's kind of the same thing with Terraria too. I don't know if they just put out the last update for that or not, but like they continuously like supported that game and made like a multitude of improvements over the years. instead of just like, okay, we got, our money. We're just going to move on to the next thing to get more money. It's like, both of those games released free updates for years, and they just made the game better, added replay value to it. It definitely, like, I want to get back into Stardew because of the latest update and how big it is. There's, a lot of new content. There's new items. Like, it's cool to see people not super money hungry and they just want to like do what's best for the game and not try to, grab an extra $20 out of somebody for some DLC.
Exactly. And that's exactly how Binding of Isaac is too, right, Jim?
I was actually going to bring that up, yeah. But they're all like paid for the most part. Like they do add some stuff for free, but all of the main things are like actual expansions. So, but still, they add like hundreds of hours to the game each time. I think they're done now because it's it's a 15-year-old game at this point. But yeah, that's why I played it for so long. I still have never beaten everything in it. 1,500 hours later.
Jeez, you still haven't like actually like beat the game?
I mean, I haven't 100% of the game.
Oh, okay.
There's really hard characters, and it's like not fun to play as them. And like that's how you unlock some of the best items in the game. I just don't want to do it. I've also started over multiple times too. So
yeah, I remember you telling me that like you were playing on like I think your PlayStation, and then you moved over to your Steam Deck or whatever because like achievements and whatnot.
And 100%ing a game in general, it doesn't matter what the game is. Like that takes dedication and time to do that.
Well, Isaac has always been like I just want to play a game, but I don't want to get too deep into anything, or like I just need to literally pass time or play a game before bed. So that's how the hours just build up.
And now Balatro is that game for you.
It is, but I have to stop playing Balatro a little quicker than I do Isaac because losing a few times in Balatro, I just get so annoyed.
By the way, my buddy Gage wanted me to tell you that he is hopelessly addicted to that game now.
I mean, I've played like 20 hours of it already, I think. Like, it's so good.
And my life on YouTube has been like consumed by Balatro content and watching people play.
He's had it for less than a week now, and he said, yeah, I'm full time. So he's over 40 hours.
I like that expression. I'm going to use that. All right, well, let's go ahead and just hop into Dino Crisis then. Dino Crisis was released on September 23rd, 1999 in North America, developed and published by Capcom, led by creator of Resident Evil, Shinji Mikami, and it's, a straight up survival horror game. Obviously, we've mentioned here that, me and Mike don't really like survival horror games, but I like this game. I do.
And it's interesting too that they kind of coined the term a panic horror game. I don't know if you saw that, where it was originally labeled as survival horror, and they kind of coined the term, well, it's more like a panic horror game instead of survival horror.
That makes sense.
Which I kind of see what they're dealing with, they're saying with that.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. So Kyle, what is your history with this game? Because I know you said you played it as a kid.
Yeah, so when I was like, probably like 8, 9, 10 years old, I remember watching, too young. I remember watching my my cousin and my uncle play it. And I just remember them talking about like needing hemostats and stuff. And I remember I wasn't allowed to play it, but I like stayed up really late one night and I went out into the living room and I played it a little bit. And I was just like, mesmerized by how like scary it was. I mean, especially for being like a kid, like, you run into a room and this dinosaur's coming at you. It was just like, it really makes sense why they called it panic horror, because I definitely felt panicked. I mean, even now going back and playing it, and you go into a room and there's just 2 raptors in there and you're like, what do I do? Yeah. I think also I offer an interesting, or I guess more so just a different perspective, because I love survival horror games. Resident Evil is probably my favorite series of all time.
What is your favorite Resident Evil?
The original 2, by a country mile for sure. It's such a good game.
So it's looking like we'll probably have you on all the survival horror episodes. I mean, it'll be a while before we do another one, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I big fan. And I mean, I've played every Resident Evil game, every mainline Resident Evil game. I've played all of them. And they're all good, but we don't talk about 6.
I'm aware. Yeah. No, I mean, we've talked about it on the last episode where we did Alone in the Dark, but yeah, I've dabbled in them over the years. It's always a genre that I like the idea of and I want to like, but then I actually play it and I'm like, well, never mind.
Yeah, whenever I was a kid, I kind of similar to Kyle's story, I was watching my cousins play Resident Evil and I don't know which one it was, but the one I specifically remember is they're running down the hallway and then the dogs jump through the windows. And as a kid, that scared the hell out of me, and I never went and played the games after that.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure that's 2. When the dogs come through the windows in like one of the back hallways. Yeah, that's a terrifying part for sure.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I was like 6 or 7 and I played the original one. So I borrowed it off some like a friend or something, and just the zombie turning around to look at you, I was like, this is so scary. I can't play this.
Oh yeah. And I think because I actually didn't play like the original on PlayStation. I played the GameCube remake, which is great, by the way.
Yeah, apparently that's a definitive version, right?
For sure. And I mean, seeing that scene when I played it, because still I was really young playing this on GameCube, that like instilled fear in me for sure. That definitely set the tone for the whole game.
So with all that, like, how long did everyone play this for?
I beat it.
Oh, wow.
I beat it in I think 6.5 hours.
Okay. That's not too bad at all.
I played about 5 hours. My footage total is like 5.5, but a lot of that is like me pausing to, as we'll get into later, look at a walkthrough.
Oh, okay. I did about 3.5, almost 4 hours. And whenever I quit, mainly because of recording coming up. But I was lost and I was running around. We'll get into that more later on. But
oh, that's going to be a big bullet point for me. Do you guys remember your stopping points? Like what you were doing in the game when you stopped?
So I got like, you fight the giant T-Rex that you can't actually kill. And then after that, they introduce the new kind of dinosaur that can one-shot you at any time if you're not careful. And at that point, I was like, all right, you pretty much have to use like the shotgun the whole time. You can't use the pistol anymore. And at that point, I was like, you know what? Like, I'm just following a walkthrough anyway. I've kind of hit my point with this. And I felt like I've seen everything there is to see in the game anyway.
At that point, like, you're pretty much like, I'd say halfway or a little more than halfway. And you've seen what you need to see.
That's only halfway. That's really discouraging.
even from what Jimmy just said, that I didn't see those new dinosaurs at all. I was trapped in, I think it was the basement area where there's that experimental room.
Okay.
And you need to unlock that door, and I could not figure out how to unlock the door for the life of me.
I think I know what you're talking about, and that just like emphasizes one of my bullet points even more.
Yeah, so the last hour of my footage is me running around the entire complex inside and out, trying to figure out where I needed to be, and I could not figure it out at all.
I also play on easy, by the way. I'm not ashamed to admit it.
I played on easy as well.
Okay.
Same.
Okay.
I think one thing I noticed with playing on easy is that they kind of just like give you all the guns to start. You start with a pistol, shotgun, and grenade launcher. And I think as opposed to like in the normal game, I think you just start with a pistol because there's like the area where you find the shotgun and then the area where you find the grenade launcher.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. But I've learned, like, over the last few episodes, I've always done normal because I'm like, well, this is the standard. But I've quickly learned I'm just going to go to easy for now on, just to experience the game how I want to experience it.
I think for what you're doing on the podcast, it's probably just like the best thing to do anyways. Otherwise, just difficulty alone is going to like hold you back when you're just really trying to play the game and get the most you can out of it. You're not playing it to like get some kind of satisfaction out of beating it. You just want to like, learn about the game, get the mechanics down, and the overall feel.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I mean, we have also like started just never using save states. I did use it once in this game, but that was only the first time you fight a T-Rex. Basically what I did was anytime I would die, I would just reload my save so I didn't have to use a resuscitation, because most of the time you're not that far from a save room. So to me, it was like conserving the item, and I would just, reset the game. And at that point, I was dying a few times, and I'm like, I'm just going to use the save state to cut down on time. But I didn't use it to like make the game easier. It was mostly just to save time. You know what I mean?
I think the part you use the save state was the only part I use the save state as well. With that one T-Rex fight where I think you have to wait for him to unlock the door. So you just kind of like run to this end and you turn around by the door and then you just keep shooting him until the door gets unlocked and you can go through it.
I actually used it on the first T-Rex fight when you're in that little office because I didn't know what to do.
Oh, okay.
It's really easy, but I just didn't. The first time I'm like, why do I keep getting one shot by this T-Rex?
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. The second fight is like pretty much just as annoying.
More annoying even.
You have, first of all, you have to run away from it, and then you get to the spot, and then you have to like time your shots perfectly to when he opens his mouth, because if you miss it, then you just get one shot. And I think I died the first one time, and I was like, okay, I know this is going to be a problem. So I hit a save state right there, and then I just, it took me probably like 2 or 3 tries to actually get the timing down.
Now, with the Office one, when you first meet the T-Rex, which by the way scared the hell out of me, because who would be expecting that to happen when you're in that room?
Mm-hmm.
I died, as I assume we all did, but I never had that event trigger again for me. So I went back to the Office and it never happened a second time.
That's interesting.
That is weird.
Yeah. So I died. It uses the resuscitation. I'm like, all right, well, I have a grenade launcher. Gonna equip that. I go into the room and I'm doing everything I can to trigger that event. And it never happened. So I never fought the T-Rex a second time.
Well, I think what triggers it is you grab the item in the corner. And I'm assuming you grab that because you have to.
What item in what corner?
In like the corner of that room, there's like the metals or something, and you have to grab an item from there.
Okay, so I never grabbed it the first time when it triggered because I didn't know the code.
Oh, well, I don't know. It's been a while since I was at that part, but
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is I thought, oh, because I interacted with this, maybe that's what triggered the T-Rex, but it never happened again. So maybe if I had that code and I went there, maybe that would have triggered it if I actually got into the safe in that area.
So I think further down on the desk on that back wall, because like on the right side, there's the metals. If you walk further down, there's an item that you pick up. And I think that's what triggers.
Oh, well then that's probably why it never triggered for me again.
all right, well, we got pretty deep into this. Let's go back to the beginning of the game. We always do this. We just jump into like the topic we want to talk about, but we never set the stage for what the game actually fucking is. You're just trapped on an island with dinosaurs. I mean, that's the game. I thought the opening cutscene and the story stuff was good. The voice acting is bad in a good way. It's not like cringe or anything. It's very like B-movie cheesy, which I enjoyed.
Yeah. The animations, the models all looked great. For anyone, if you've ever played Resident Evil and you've never heard of this game, just imagine Resident Evil, but you have dinosaurs instead of zombies. That's a good way to imagine what the game looks like.
Yeah, but the game doesn't have pre-rendered backgrounds, though. It's all 3D, and I think it looks really good.
It looks amazing.
It looks really good. And that's one thing I noticed, too, is it's like, even when there's areas where you're running around and the camera kind of follows you, like, I thought that was a nice breakup from, like, just only, like, the fixed camera angles like you would see in Resident Evil. And, I mean, even just, like, the depth with having, like, the 3D backgrounds and whatnot, like, that just made the game feel and look a whole lot better.
Yeah, going into this, I'm thinking about, dinosaurs on the PS1. I thought back to the Tomb Raider experience, and I thought, this is going to look terrible. This is going to just be a bad looking game. I was impressed with how smooth everything looked. The dinosaurs looked really good.
Especially the T-Rex, dude. The T-Rex, it looks insane. And I know you guys didn't get that far, but when you get to the final battle, like you really get to see all these details of like his teeth and whatnot. And for the time, I was like, wow, this looks really good.
It wasn't what I was expecting at all. So it was a pleasant surprise of how good this entire thing looks.
Music is also amazing.
I knew you were going to say something about the music. As I was playing through, I was like, Jim loves this. And I agree. I think the music is great. I don't know. I feel like a lot of like Resident Evil games and whatnot too, like they're really good at like setting the tone with the music. You get a lot of those like strings that are just kind of like sustained, and it just adds that whole creepy vibe and keeps you like on the edge of your seat.
When I got to the first save room, I was like, you know what? This is going into my rotation.
It keeps you tense the entire time. Like the one song or soundtrack thing with the horns, where like it's a build up into like wow, and then and then horns again. Every time that happened, I like pulled out my gun. I was like, "Where's something's coming for me?" And I don't know where it's at. I read that the inspiration for this game, I mean, obviously Jurassic Park, big inspiration. We can see that right away. But Aliens as well. And it was an interesting thing because before I even read that fact while playing the game, I was like, this kind of gives me an Aliens vibe. So the fact that like they nailed that influence that they wanted to go for, it was spot on.
Did you catch the part where they referenced Jurassic Park directly?
I may have seen it, but I may forget.
They're like going down an elevator and the one guy, Rick, is like, this is like that one movie.
Oh, yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Obviously, tank controls with this style game.
Oh,
Resident Evil did the same thing.
Mylanta. don't get me started on these fucking tank controls. Okay, like
You don't like them?
look, I've played a bunch of Resident Evil games, and I don't know what it is, but the tank controls in this were like probably one of my biggest complaints. It was mostly the turning. I felt like the turns would start super wide and then they would just kind of curve super sharp. So it's like I found myself like overturning a lot because at the start it felt like the turn would be going very slow and then I would just end up curving into a wall when I'm trying to like round a corner. That fucked with me a lot because I'd be like trying to run away from a dinosaur, because I'm sure as you saw like in the game, they're pretty easy to get around and like run away from, but like with those turns, like if you're trying to hit a corner and you end up in the wall, like they're going to catch up to you and get you.
Interesting.
Honestly, if you think this is bad, then you don't know how good you have it right now, because we've played some stinkers.
I bet, dude. I hate tank controls to begin with. Like I feel like that's definitely a thing that we've evolved past in like, you know, gaming in general. But like it just, the Resident Evil games did not feel as bad. Like Resident Evil 2 did not feel as bad. The even though it was like the tank turns and stuff, I'm able to like get around and do what I need to do and like accurately go where I need to go. Whereas this, it's like even towards the end of the game after playing for almost 7 hours, I'm still like teetering back and forth, like doing this like, you know, wobbly kind of run because I'm just trying to like, I can't go straight because it's like, oh, I'm too angled this way, and then I try to correct it and then I overcorrect. It's like it was such a hassle for me.
For me, is about the first 5 minutes I struggled a lot, and I probably will with every single game that has tank controls, but I felt like I got it down pretty fast. And I mean, like Jimmy said, we've had some bad experiences with the game, so I felt like this was smooth. It handled well for me.
Yeah, I was going to say, I actually wanted to praise this game for the tank controls because specifically, whenever the angles change, you still stay the direction that you were going anyway.
Yeah.
I forget what game I think it was Alone in the Dark. When the fixed camera angle would change, your direction you had to push would change with it. So we would constantly be just like bumping around, going the wrong way. And with this game, it's very smooth.
Okay, that does sound really annoying. I guess that's something I didn't realize, that like you keep going, like you're still pressing up even though you're moving like a different direction because the camera angle changed. That is nice.
And also like Tomb Raider is the worst tank controls by far.
I haven't played Tomb Raider since I was a kid, but I can only imagine.
And to go off of what Kyla was saying, just with the turning and whatnot, there were times when I'm running for a door and I kind of missed the door because of the way it turned a little bit. So I had to like kind of readjust and run at the door like head on. But that was few and far between. Honestly, I killed every dinosaur I saw. I didn't think you could run around them. Like I had the idea of maybe I could, but they just seemed too big to get around.
I just feel like you need to do that. Like if you would have played longer, I bet you would have ran out of ammo and been fucked.
That was going to be the first thing I brought up.
You have to dodge them, especially the raptors. They're very easy to dodge because like whenever you run into them, even if you run directly at it, it won't attack you immediately. It has like that little delay, so you can kind of run around it.
A big thing I noticed with running away from like the dinosaurs, like it's effective, but once you get to a certain point, you'll like run past the dinosaur and go into a room, and it follows you into that room. And that can lead you to some pretty fucked situations, because if you run into a room that's like, there's no other way out other than the door you came in, and then the dinosaur's coming in with you, you pretty much have to fight it or like try to maneuver your way around it. It's a lot easier to just try to take them out when you're in a hallway, because there's a lot more places you can go. And then, but I ran into that issue as well, running out of ammo, because I ran to a point to where I had to fight a lot of dinosaurs, especially because of one of the choices I made in the game, where it was like, okay, you're going to go through a lot of fucked shit. And I ran to a point where I was like, I have nothing but darts.
Oh, wow. I guess that goes to the survival part of this game of they don't give you a lot of ammo. And I ran out of handgun ammo pretty quickly, and I was just using my shotgun because like they seem to be giving me more shotgun ammo than anything else. So I'm like, all right, well, I guess this is the weapon I'm going to be using from now on.
Did you ever check all those boxes on the walls, like the red boxes and whatnot? They had used plugs to open?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I used some of them to store some of my stuff. and I noticed that they also have things in them. So I thought that was very nice.
Yeah, that when I would run into situations where I ran out of something, I would just try to run back to where I remembered a box was like that I hadn't opened because they have stuff in them. And one thing I did like about this game with the boxes too is that you can access all of the boxes from whatever one you're at, which makes it so nice. Because I couldn't imagine having to like run back to a specific box just to get some ammo. Like you just have to run to any box and you're good to go. I feel like if you had to run back.
I did not know that.
Really?
I was running back, especially to that one by the control room. I ran back there a bunch of times.
Jeez, dude. Yeah, when you're in the boxes up at the top, there's a tab called Access. And when you open that, it shows all of the boxes that you've opened and you can go into any of those.
But I think it's only per color, right? So you can only access all green boxes from a green box.
Yeah. It's only like green boxes. You can only get into green boxes, red, yellow, whatever. But it was like, there's some areas where there's like at least a couple where there's a green box, like right next to a red box. And that's a gold mine right there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I wish I would have known that. I would leave a lot of stuff in there because I just couldn't carry anything. So like, so many things I just left behind because I didn't think that, I'm like, I'm not going to run all the way back there right now, especially later in the game.
It very much follows. I mean, survival, you have to do a lot of inventory management. I do wish that they put the boxes on the map when you discover one or use one, I guess. Like, oh, this area has a green square. Oh, there's where the green box is. It would be really nice because there was a time, like Jimmy said, with the green one by the control room. I was like, oh yeah, I have some stuff in there. But where was that one located? Because I got to it so early in the game that I couldn't remember later on where it was.
I think overall too, like since we're talking about the map, I feel like the map, for me at least, was pretty useless. It did almost nothing for me. Most of me getting around was like based off of memory and like, okay, like this is where this is. And a lot of my playtime, I feel like I could have beat the game faster if there was a better map because I was doing a lot of backtracking and like going to the wrong place. I'm like, oh no, I have to go through this door. Or like when you go up into the vents, like remembering which vent to go in and where to go from there. It was like a lot of that. The game, like the whole map in the game itself, like is really not that big. There's just like a lot of convoluted ways to get to certain points. And there's like, oh, there's this one room that you need to access, but you don't have the proper key card for, which is like in true survival horror fashion, like pretty much every Resident Evil game is like, okay, you're in this area and there's a lot of doors you can't get into and you have to get these different keys and whatnot. And then you start getting access to these rooms. So it feels big, but really it's just like you're doing a lot of back and forth to get things to be able to access certain points.
The main thing I would use the map for really was like, obviously I'm trying to avoid dinosaurs as much as possible. So when you go into a room, I would hit the map real quick and see where the next open door I could go to was. That way I knew where to run to as soon as I got in there. That way I wasn't trying to dodge a dinosaur and explore at the same time. But I do really wish, obviously they had named locations on the map, like, control room, whatever room. And if they just had a little marker showing where you were at.
That's the biggest thing for me is there was no marker to show where you were at, what direction you were facing. It's just like, okay, this is the room. And if it's a room that has like 3 doors in it, you're like, okay, what door am I looking at?
I struggled with that in like the bigger rooms a lot, like the hangar and all that stuff where like you're looking at the map and you know where the doors are, but you're just walking back and forth trying to figure out specifically which door you have to go to. And I would just go in the same one over and over again because I got like mixed up.
Yeah, and they give you that compass to say, oh, you're looking in this direction, but then you have to now take that compass information, now look at the map, and then you're trying to overlay that compass direction into the room you're on to figure out what door am I looking at. Like if you had a dot showing what room, because it already knows what room you're in, that'd be nice. If they had a dot with an arrow pointing in the direction you're looking on the map, even better. But I don't even think Resident Evil does that, right?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
It just feels like at the time, like that wasn't the thing that they did a lot of.
Alone in the Dark was the same way as well. I remember that because we had the same complaint.
Yep.
I just feel like with Resident Evil games though, like even though the map was probably similar and not very helpful, it was still like a little more obvious of like where you needed to go. I don't feel like I need to like rely on a map when I'm playing, like I think mainly I'm going off of Resident Evil 2, like OG Resident Evil 2. That's kind of like my basis for comparison. And playing that game, I mean, partially because I've played it so much, but even removing that, like I never feel the need to like look at a map because like I said, it's very obvious where you need to go, like where things are. It's like, oh, like this hallway has these rooms. Like I know I don't need to look at the map for the orientation of them because it's just obvious, Whereas in Dino Crisis, it's like I felt lost a lot. And like even like trying to go back to a map, I'm like, okay, I just see all these fucking squares, but I don't know what they are. And like I'd have to like go into a room just to figure out what room it is. And then like, okay, that's that room. And then that would help me get a better idea of where everything, is supposed to be. And then towards the end of the game, like I said, because the map isn't actually that big, it was really easy to get around because I had all these doors unlocked and there's like quicker ways to get to places. But like the first half of the game is like super confusing.
Well, I think what plays a part in that is the fact that, and you can say, Kyle, if this changes after I stopped, but the environments just look so samey. Like everything is very much almost exactly the same looking. So like there's not that like distinct area of the map to know like, oh, I'm here now. It all just kind of looks very similar.
Yeah, you run into that like throughout the whole game pretty much. Like the areas all look pretty samey. I mean, once you kind of get towards the end and you get into like some of like the laboratory areas, like it's a little different, but it's still not any better as, like finding where you need to go. Because like for me, at least, a lot of the doors that you have to go into, like the smaller ones, kind of just blend into the wall. Like you kind of have to like hit that second camera angle to really be like, oh, okay, there's a door there. Or like just, I found myself mashing X a lot when I'm like running around trying to just like find a door. And especially because like I was having a hard time with the tank controls. If I knew where a door was and I had like a dinosaur chasing me, I was just mashing X the whole fucking time. So I could like trigger it as soon as I got near it.
Even on the topic of mashing X, like just trying to find items because you can't really see them a lot of the time or like know what an important thing is to interact with if it's not an item. So you're just walking around these desks and walls, just pushing X on every single thing, even though it just gives you like flavor text most of the time.
I think there was one area where there was a sign on the wall and I walked up to it to read the sign. And then I picked up an item because I was like by a box at the same time. And like, now I'm going to have to go through every area and go to every box and every shelf and hit X because I didn't realize there's items hidden in these things.
Well, that's why I ended up using a walkthrough, specifically in the area where you were talking about earlier with the T-Rex. Like, if you're not in the exact right spot, you're not interacting with the right thing. So, like, I thought I did everything in certain rooms, but I didn't. And, like, once I hit the point where I used the walkthrough once, I'm like, might as well just use it now,
Okay, so a lot of this talk is, like, very relevant to, like, my biggest complaint about this game, which is that overall, it's very, very difficult to figure out like where you're supposed to go or what you're supposed to be doing. Like one of the biggest examples, and I kind of think this is where Mike got stuck because he couldn't figure out what to do, is you get that fingerprint scanner. Do you remember picking that up?
Yep.
So when you get that, the first time you have to use it, there's a dead body next to this map by that room with the elevators. You're supposed to stand next to it and use the fingerprint scanner to get his fingerprint to make like an ID card or something to allow you access to elevators and whatnot. It doesn't give you any indication that that's what you need to do. And that happens every time you need to use the fingerprint scanner because towards the end of the game, like you catch up with Dr. Kirk, blah, blah, blah. And you have to use a fingerprint scanner on him to like, make like the top tier, card. And like, it doesn't even tell you or give you any indication that that's what you're supposed to do. Like, you don't even really need to like walk into the room that he's in, when you're at that point, because he's kind of just being held hostage and you have to go next to him and use a fingerprint scanner. You don't even need to go into that room. So it's like, I feel like a lot of people hit that point in the game where they're like doing all this stuff and they got what they need. And they're like, oh, I need this ID card. What am I supposed to do? It's the same thing with the first scenario with the elevators and whatnot, where it's like, I ran over that body like, 4 or 5 times and was tapping around it, mashing X all throughout the room, all throughout the walls and stuff. And that was where I hit the point where I needed a guide because I'm like, what am I supposed to be doing here? So I had to like read through the guide up to the point where I was at. And then I was like, oh, there's the dead scientist next to the, behind the map thing. And you go up to him and use a fingerprint scanner. And I was just kind of like, what? Like, I would have never ever guessed that. If I didn't use a guide, I would probably still be at that spot because I just never would have thought that that's what I needed to do.
So that's the one thing for me is that I know, even though I don't play survival horror games, the one thing I do know is that you should read everything. And that's what I was doing. If I found journals, if I found memos, anything on walls, I was reading everything. In a journal or a memo thing, they talk about the fingerprint thing. So that's how I knew about it, because it clearly says, oh, you need this device in order to remap ID cards. So it told me that. So when I found that guy in that room you're talking about, I was like, oh, okay. They're clearly saying that he has a white stripe on his thing, so he must be a researcher. They're giving me this more information for a reason, so I used the fingerprint thing on him. But now came the next part of, now how do I transfer this to the card? And I couldn't figure that part out.
There's a specific computer you have to do it on. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to like find this computer, and then like it's so confusing. And I mean, it's hard to complain about it because I mean, it's part of the game and you don't want it to be too handholdy. But I feel like at this point, like with no direction at all, you know, I feel like Dark Souls games have more direction than that, where it's like, yeah, they're not telling you anything, but it's like you can still kind of get an idea of what you need to do or where you need to go. Whereas this, it's like, okay, they're giving you vague information that you're finding in memos, and you have to like be a pretty smart person to like put that together.
Yeah.
And me not being a smart person, like I'm just kind of like, okay, like I have this fucking fingerprint scanner. Like what do I do?
So I found that, and I was looking at my map and I found a room where there's a locked door from one direction, which means I went into it from a different direction. So I didn't unlock that door. I guess I didn't explore that room. I went in and that's where I found the computer, and that's where I changed the ID card. But like you said, there's like multiple steps where you have to read a bunch of things. I have a piece of paper here with a bunch of numbers on it, a bunch of people's names. What do I have? I have lock codes for safes, their pager numbers. I have this whole list of information, which I kind of love in video games, where you had to like kind of keep track of this information with a separate piece of pen and paper.
I will say every time I needed to have like a number for a code, I already had it written down. So like that was cool. Like any sort of like memo or anything, anytime I saw a number, I'd write it down on my phone and just be ready to go. But to your point, Kyle, I do agree with you, but I also just feel like this is how games were at that time. So it's kind of hard to like hold it against it, especially when this is a very like quote unquote mild example of this. Like their adventure games, like any sort of more convoluted survival horror games, like they're way worse than what this game does. To the point, like even Silent Hill, dude, it's way, way worse than this. You have to combine items that you would never think to combine for stupid shit. So like, while, you know, it's hard to say because I did use a walkthrough, I just don't know if it's that bad.
I will say I never used a walkthrough, and it was a little annoying. But then when I found the solution, it wasn't more so the game, it was just the fact that I didn't explore everything. And it goes back to the whole map thing of, because I could see which doors are locked, I was able to use the process of elimination to see if I've been in there or not. But the one thing with the map too is that they show you, oh, here's your objective of where you're supposed to go. But for me, at least, at a certain point, that stops. There's no more objective that shows up on the map.
Well, it does do that thing where the doors you have to go into will flash. I don't know if you noticed that.
I did for some of them, but where I stopped at, nothing was flashing. I was in every single room. Doors were locked.
It doesn't happen every time, but yeah.
Yeah. So maybe it goes back to what you were saying of there could have been something in that room that I had to interact with, but I wasn't standing in the exact spot I needed to be in to interact with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of what this game is, yeah.
That's a good point that you made, because like there are like the fingerprint scanner, for example, when you have to get Dr. Kirk's fingerprint or whatever, you have to stand in a specific spot on like his right side. You can't stand anywhere else. Otherwise it's like, oh, you can't use this fingerprint scanner. Where I feel like if someone came to the conclusion that they need to use that fingerprint scanner and they tried all these different things, I feel like somebody might give up because they're like, well, I tried it on him. They just didn't try it in that specific spot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, this game is just as convoluted as any other survival horror game, I feel like. So that's kind of where I struggled with how I felt about it. It's like, I still had a good time using the walkthrough playing it. It's not like the walkthrough took away from my enjoyment, which is kind of how I feel about a lot of these older games where like even though I'm reading what to do, it's still fun. And to me, that's like the mark of a good game. You know what I mean?
And we've been on this map for a long time, but there was one area where I needed to get outside, and I couldn't remember how to get outside because I was in the building for so long that I forgot my path out. And it goes back to where if the rooms were labeled, that would have been great. But some of those like when you're walking into a new room, some of those names are ridiculously long. Like area where materials are imported from. It's like, why is this the name of the room?
So yeah, I guess we could probably get into the story a little bit more. I really liked how there are choices in this game.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's really cool because I mean, it affects that because there's 3 different endings to the game. I don't know if you guys knew this or not. I honestly, so here's the thing: like the choices are cool, and I'm gonna kind of roll back on what I just said, but like the only choice that actually affects the game, like the outcome, is the final choice you make. All of the other ones are just different ways to do what you need to do. So you're either going to pick Rick's method or you're going to pick Gale's method, where most of Gale's methods are going to be like guns ablaze, running in, doing your thing. And Rick's method is more like, oh, you got to find this item or find these items and combine these things, where it's like, if you got the ammo, it's usually easier to do Gale's method.
I usually just went with Rick because Gale seems like a dick.
Yeah, I did the same.
Yeah, no, I hate Gale. Gale sucks. But like, especially with like the last like decision, not the last decision, but the second to last decision you have to make, you have to get like the stabilizer in another item. And it's like with Gale's method, he's like, okay, here's where they're at. You just have to go there and get it. And like, yeah, there's a lot of dinosaurs on the way, but like if you're good at dodging them or you have enough ammo, it's pretty easy. Whereas the other method, like Rick's method, you have to like go through all these rooms, get these different codes, like combine items, and it just takes a lot longer than just like running to where the actual items are.
The second choice that you make, where I chose Rick's method, you have to do this puzzle where like letters flash on the screen. I don't know if you did that one.
No, I think I picked Gale's for that.
Yeah, it's just like with Gale, you can go through a path with a bunch of dinosaurs, or with Rick, you do this puzzle to go through this hatch on the ground. And it's like this big screen, and these letters will just pop up really quick, and you have to write them down. It's very interesting, but like, obviously you'll show this in the footage, but you have to do it 3 times in a row, and you can only fail twice or you lose. I was ready because I wrote them down, but like as a kid, I can just imagine just like, oh shit, I can't remember this. You know what I mean? I also thought the puzzles were pretty easy overall. I didn't really struggle with any of them.
That's a bullet point I had, was that the puzzles, other than the puzzles where you had to move like containers or crates, I thought all the puzzles were super easy. The ones where you had to like they had like the numbers or the letters on the screen, you had to type in whatever the passcode was. I think that was with like the DDK, whatever that thing is to unlock doors. Those ones were a little confusing because it was like, at first it's like, okay, you have to like eliminate like the leather columns by like what number it's giving you, or like, but something like that. But then they kind of flip flop it. And then that's where it got like kind of confusing for me.
I thought they were kind of fun, honestly. And like most of the time you're figuring it out, and then you kind of just figure out what the word is anyway, once you're like halfway through. So like, I don't know. I obviously have said on this show that I fucking hate puzzles in video games, but like none of these to me were that hard.
No.
I think my favorite puzzles were the ones where you would have like the 3 pieces and you had to like rotate them and put them on in the correct order to like make like the things connect or whatever. I don't know why, but I thought those were just like super fun. Trying to like figure out, oh no, I got to turn this or lay this down first. Like those were all cool, but like the ones where you had to move the shipping containers and stuff, oh my fucking God. Or when you had to push the boxes on the ground, I'd have to reset like 2 or 3 times. And I think for the one with the boxes on the ground, I ended up looking at a guide because I was like, what am I doing wrong?
I looked at a guide for the containers for sure.
It definitely wasn't bad. Like they were easy in the beginning, but when you get to like the shipping containers, it makes you stop and think for a second.
Well, yeah, because you have to like pick all your moves and then hit start. And it's like, okay, you have these directions, but it's like with the one, it's like, oh, when you pick up, it's going to go all the way up. So it's like, okay, you have to go like up, down, hook, left, release, and then hit start and hope that that's what you needed to do.
Exactly.
And after a few tries with that, I was like, yep, let's get this guide out because I have no idea.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the only one I think took me the longest amount of time was with the pipes.
Oh, yeah.
It was just first understanding what I was doing with each of the controllers and what each controller box did. And then from there, I was like, okay, this is what's controlling what. Now what colors go where. And it took me maybe 10, 15 minutes, but I eventually got it.
Like the answer to that puzzle is like super elementary too, because it's just like red, blue, green one way, and then you start the other one and it's just red, blue, green, or whatever the 3 colors were. It's like, oh, like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, pretty much.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of gone through most of this game. We're almost a fucking hour into this podcast.
Oh, wow.
I feel like there's just so much more we didn't talk about. Like with the DDK system, I agree that whenever the point you brought up, Kyle, of now they start throwing numbers into the system of, oh, 2 is equivalent to B and 3 is equivalent to C. And now you got to start converting numbers to letters to decipher the code. I felt like it was going to be very overwhelming. But then like what Jimmy said, you get like the first 3 letters and you're like, oh, this is what the word is. And you can just go in and type it in from there. At least everything I've done.
I'm pretty sure with like the DDK things too, how they were labeled by number, or not by number, by letter. I'm pretty sure that letter is the starting letter of each word.
It is, yeah.
So like the W one was like waterway or something like that. D was Dr. Kirk.
Oh, I never picked up on that. Interesting.
Yeah, the L one was laboratory, yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, this word starts with an L. And honestly, like, I got to a point where I would just like kind of look at all the letters and be like, okay, what words can I build with all these letters?
Yeah.
And I like with laboratory, I was just kind of looking through and I like spelled it out. And I was like, oh yeah, laboratory, duh.
I will say I didn't like the button mashing shit where you had to like mash buttons to get out of like a dinosaur or something.
Oh, it was like the quick time events, like where like danger would pop up on the screen.
Or even when they get you on the ground, normally you have to just jam the buttons to get up quicker.
Or dude, when they would like knock you down and you would be like staggered on the ground for a bit and you have to like mash buttons to get back up. Did you guys ever hit a point where like an enemy knocked into you and knocked your gun out of your hand?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh my God, dude.
The pterodactyls.
Like getting like your gun knocked out of your hand and flung away from it was so frustrating. Like what would happen if you left that room? Does your gun go away? Like what?
I wonder if it just wouldn't let you leave, maybe.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
I mean, there's got to be something put in place to where you're not just going to lose a gun. But like, I can only imagine if like that weren't the case and you're playing the game and you like run away from this dinosaur and you come back and it's just not there. That would be awful.
But it is a nice feature too that they have that option where it can happen. It's annoying, but it's a cool little detail to add in.
Definitely adds to the whole panic horror thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Being a Resident Evil game, the whole forced camera perspective, these awkward angles that you're running at the camera or you're running into a direction where you can't see where you're going, just has that Resident Evil vibe to it where you're on edge if you're running at the camera because you're like, what am I about to run into? Are they going to use this opportunity to jump scare me with the camera angle?
Especially if you can hear like raptors or something.
I was just going to say that there were times where I'm at an angle running at the camera and as soon as it switches, there's raptors in front of me. I'm like, no!
Yeah, and there's also that one audio track where there's like clicking in the track and it sounds like the raptor's nails on the metal. So when that music would start playing, I would stop and like aim because I'm like, I hear raptors, but where are they? But no, it's just the audio track.
I do like how she will look and aim at them if they're on the screen.
Yes.
That's actually a function you can turn off.
Oh, really?
If you want to make it harder. Yeah, it's like an aim assist thing.
I would never turn that off.
Absolutely not. No.
No.
Why would I make the game significantly harder?
No, I thought it was just because that's a Resident Evil thing too, right? Where he looks at items on the ground.
I'm pretty sure it is, yeah.
Maybe in later Resident Evil games. I'm not sure if it's in the early ones.
Yeah, their like head will turn to like look at an important item or something.
But with that very first hallway you're walking down and it's all glass on the sides when you go from the outside to inside, it brought back the dogs jumping through the window thing from Resident Evil 2. I'm like, it's going to happen. I know it's going to happen. But it never happened for a long time. It's like they're getting me too comfortable on this, that I'm running up and down this hallway, nothing's happening. And then one time, I'm just like, yeah, cruising along, nothing bad is happening. And then just fucking jumps through, tackles me. I jump and like, they really hold off on some big moments that you're expecting. but they just hold off long enough for it to happen that you kind of forget that it's going to be a thing.
This game definitely does a good job at like building anticipation for things. Cause like I did find myself too, like expecting like jump scares or whatnot, like with that hallway with the glass, and it doesn't happen, you know, the first few times you go through it. And then it eventually does happen. You're like, oh, there it is. And then it gets you even more because you're not expecting it to happen. And then now's the time it happens.
I mean, I got every time a dinosaur busted through the door after I ignored it. I'm like, fuck, here it is.
Dude, that would get me too, because like I was aware that happened, but like I wouldn't even think about it. I'm just trying to get away from them. And then, like I said earlier, I would go into a room that has no other exits other than the way you came in. And then all of a sudden you're just trapped in there. And when you get to the point that you're you have those like stronger dinosaurs that can like one hit you, getting trapped in a room with one of those, not fun.
Well, that's like the walkthrough I was looking at. Like when I hit the point with those dinosaurs, they're like, you might as well just get rid of your handgun because it's useless now for the rest of the game. I'm like, okay.
The guide I was reading, I wonder if we read the same guide, because it said something along the lines of that too, where it was pretty much just like, yeah, use your shotgun from now on.
I had so much handgun ammo because I was conserving it. I had like 40. I'm like, I'm good. And then the walkthrough's like, well, that sucks.
I should have known that I was supposed to avoid enemies more. It felt like because they're dinosaurs, it's more impossible.
Well, they also respawn. Like whenever you leave a section of the map and come back, they're back, which is very annoying. Like I feel like if you're going to take the time to kill them, they should stay dead. But I guess that would make it too easy.
I will say that like having beat the game and seeing, you know, all that you're going to go through, even though I did run out of ammo at one point and I was struggling, I don't think you need to be as conservative with ammo, just because it's like there's never really any point where you're going to need like a mass amount of it. Like one bullet point I had that was a complaint about this game is a lack of like boss battles. You only really like run to the T-Rex a few times, and that's pretty much it as far as boss battles go. I mean, the final boss is the T-Rex.
I figured it was from the beginning cinematic when they showed the T-Rex.
Yeah, and then with those battles, you don't need a lot of ammo for them. Like the last battle, it's pretty much like you have to survive for X amount of time until like, you know, the final thing happens and you get saved or whatever. So it's like you're pretty much just running around this room, and like this thing will pop up on the screen that says fire. Then you turn around and hit him with your grenade launcher. I shot him twice. I was hoarding grenade launcher ammo the whole fucking game, anticipating needing to have it for like, you know, a boss battle or something. And I ended the game with like, geez, there's probably like 16. I had like an inventory just full of like grenade ammo and whatnot. Handgun ammo was long gone by then. I burned through that shit so quick, especially because like once you get your handgun upgraded all the way and you get the better bullets, I don't think it's as useless as like the guide I was reading says, because like once you get those, like, I can't remember what they're called, but like they're better bullets. Like they actually do some damage, but you don't find a lot of them. I think it's kind of similar to how like the Magnum was in Resident Evil, where it's like, yeah, you have a super powerful handgun, but you're not going to get a lot of ammo for it. So you really have to like use it wisely. But that's the only time I ever felt like I needed to conserve ammo in this game.
Yeah, and I was doing the same thing of holding onto grenades for that specific reason.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, when I come to a boss, I'm going to need this. But I never got to a boss, so it was just sitting there.
I think that and the kind of like the lack of variation in enemies were two complaints I had, because it's like one thing I love about like Resident Evil games is it's like, okay, they have all these different unique bosses and like super unique enemies. Like in Resident Evil 2, obviously you have zombies, but then you have like the dogs, you have spiders, and then just like other crazy shit once you get into the lab and whatnot. Whereas it's like this game, it's like, okay, you got your raptors, you got your super raptors, you got your compies, which are like, they don't fucking do anything. They're just there. And then pterodactyls. You have that, and then the T-Rex, which shows up a couple times. Like that I thought was a little boring, because I would have liked to see a little more variation and like the enemies, because I feel like they could have done a lot more, like doing some crazy mutated dinosaurs or some shit, because they definitely had like a sci-fi element to the game with like that weird, I don't know what they fucking called it, but it was like that, like you go into that room and there's like the room's all like weird and moving, and there's like
it's like wavy, and she's like a ball of energy or something. Yeah,
it's like a ball of energy. Like they were already doing the sci-fi shit in the game. They could have done something crazier with these dinosaurs for sure and made them a little more interesting.
I mean, there's also just more dinosaurs that exist. So like they could have just used some other ones.
Exactly. Like there was a lot more room to make, those aspects of the game more interesting. Whereas I'm just like once you start seeing those like fucking Raptor S Plus Pro Max things, like there's no, that's it. You're pretty much going to see those. I think you only see the pterodactyls like once, maybe twice in the game, and you never see them again. It's just that one area where it's super annoying because they keep picking you up. And then there's the one part where it's like the quick time event where you have to like button mash, otherwise it's going to drop you into like a fan.
Oh yeah.
After that, I don't think you see him again. And it's just like, the beefy raptors and then the T-Rex.
It's interesting too, because this all just sounds like the same complaints we had about Alone in the Dark. No enemy variation. The rooms is just side by side. It's like we're complaining about the same game again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I just feel like this game is so much better in every way compared to that game, though.
Yes. Yeah, I don't want that to be confused.
Yeah, it's like, what if they did everything right, but they're still held back by, the constraints of what the genre is?
The last thing we never really talked about was the health.
Oh my God. Another big complaint of mine too. Like, why do I have to like base how much health I have on like how she's standing? Like even in Resident Evil 2, when you hit the fucking pause menu, it'll tell you what your health is at. It's either like fine, caution, or danger. With this, I'm like, okay, let me run over here and stand to see if she's limping. Like, I constantly felt like I was using things when I didn't need to. Because I didn't want to get like, I didn't want to be right on that edge to where like, oh, if I take a big hit, I'm done. And that was like, I'm just burning through healing items because I'm like, what is my health? I have no idea.
I had a surplus of health items. I think I only healed once ever because she started limping. But I agree with you. How bad is limp? Is limping bad? Am I close to death with limping? There's no indication.
So apparently there's like limp and then there's like slow limp. So it's like you're fine is where she's just chilling, standing normally. And then like I think what would be like the caution in Resident Evil is where it's like, okay, she's kind of got her hand on her hip when she's walking, but your speed's not really affected. And then when you're in like the danger zone is when you're like, okay, now you're moving slow. But it's like, I don't want to just let it get to that point because it's like that leaves you open to just die. So I was constantly just like trying to stay out of that zone, but there's really no indication of like how close you are to that.
I also never died other than bosses and like the gotcha one-hit moments. Like just from normal gameplay, I never felt like I was going to die.
Same.
So the 2 times I died, or the 2 areas I died, were the second T-Rex battle I was talking about where you have to like run to that door and then turn around. I died there a couple times. And then I died on the last fight once because there's like, it's pretty much like one-hit death. That's it. There's no like taking damage. It's like if it gets you, it gets you.
Yeah, I mean, it was the T-Rex for me. And then the few times where like those black raptors got me until I like figured out how to like, know their tails and when to hit them. But for the most part, I mean, this game is, other than not knowing where to go, is pretty fucking easy for these kind of games.
And I wonder if they like didn't do the health system like RE because they just wanted to make it different. Obviously, they're the same creator, so like, well, we can't take everything from that first game we did. But I feel like it's a more broken system that they did now. Like instead of improving, they just took it away.
Yeah, it's just different, not better.
Exactly. Yeah, different does not mean better. Because I would love to see a remake of this game. There's been like, little things on the internet. Like sometime late last year, I think there was like domain pages for Dino Crisis or like web URLs, whatever you call it, were like purchased or something like that. And that was like made public knowledge. So people are anticipating that they're going to do like a Dino Crisis remake. But I would love to see like a better health system, whatnot. Like if they could remake Dino Crisis, how they're remaking the Resident Evil games now. And Jim said this earlier when we were talking. That would be so fucking cool. Because I feel like they could do so much more with the game. And I mean, obviously, because it's like 20 years later.
I would absolutely play that. 100%.
100%, dude. Like if I got like a fucking RE4 remake with Dino Crisis, let's go. I'm in.
Oh, yeah. All right. So does anybody else have any other notes before we get into these reviews? I think we've gone through pretty much everything here.
Yeah, we've pretty much hit like all of my bullet points. I think the only other thing I had with like when we're talking about variation was like variation in weapons too. You get 3. That's it. You get a shotgun, a handgun, and the grenade launcher, and that's it. You get a couple different bullet types for the guns. Like you get your slag rounds for the shotgun and the regular shotgun ammo. And then the shotguns use the darts for some reason.
Yeah, I never understood that either.
That confused me too.
If I'm being honest with you, I didn't use the darts in the game at all. Because I was just like, okay, this is just going to like make it sleepy, but this isn't going to like get rid of my problem. So I just never really fucked with them.
I did use the poison darts.
Are they good?
They kill any enemy in one hit.
Well, that's good to know.
But there's like barely any of them. So like I used the only one I had the first time I fought one of those like black raptors. And then I realized that those were just normal enemies now. And then I was like, all right, well, I wasted that.
Yeah. But at the same time, like, did you really waste it? Because I don't think you can use it on the T-Rex at all. And like, there's no other big bosses or enemies like that. It's just like, okay, here's your raptors and here's the T-Rex.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Like I said, I never really felt the need to conserve any kind of ammo because it was just,
All right. Well, so no surprise, the reviews at the time were like crazy good. The lowest review I could even find was like a 7.5, I think. And I would have pulled from that, but it wasn't up anymore. And I wrote here too, we've talked recently about how a lot of these PS1 games would have ports on other systems, which are better. And with this one, it's actually the opposite. People consider the PS1 version like the definitive version. I guess the Dreamcast and the PC version are like way worse.
Do they say why?
I didn't read the reviews, but I'm just assuming it's like the quality of the port. Back in the day, like PC ports were kind of a gamble.
I mean, fuck, dude, they still are.
Yeah. So IGN gave it a 9.2 out of 10.
Jeez.
And here's what they said. Yeah. If you've played Resident Evil, you'll instantly feel at home playing Dino Crisis. Capcom's new dinosaur hunting adventure takes the RE paradigm and fleshes it out, brings new subtleties to it, and advances the game in weaker areas while adding new puzzles and strategy elements. But let's be clear about this. Because we may not have been before, it doesn't create a whole new paradigm. It enhances and alters the one we all know and love, which we just talked about that.
And I get their mentality of it. Like, let's not make the same game again with different enemies. I feel like they had room to improve upon what they already made with new enemies.
Yeah, if they wanted to make this completely its own thing, they should have went the whole way. I mean, there's not really much more to say about it, but I personally like this more than the Resident Evil I've played from PS1, but I've also never played as much of a Resident Evil game as I did this. So I will be interested to see once we play those.
Oh God, if you guys play 2 on this podcast, you better prepare for a long episode if I'm on it.
We're playing every game for the PS1, so we will play it.
We're playing every game, dude.
Yeah, is Resident Evil a game? Then we're going to play it. So GameSpot gave it an 8.5 out of 10, and this is what they said about the graphics. Since the game is completely 3D, it is not as easy to pick out necessary clues as it had been before in Resident Evil because everything looks uniform. In Resident Evil, you'd be able to tell what to look for because the polygonal details would stick out from the pre-rendered backgrounds. In Dino Crisis, you must really be on the lookout for anything and everything.
They hit the nail on the head with that one.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like I said, that's why I had to use a walkthrough because I just missed one little thing that I didn't get. And, what are you supposed to do?
That's actually a good point. I probably should have went to a walkthrough to see what I missed in that room. And I probably would have been frustrated to see that, it's just this one little button right here that you didn't click on.
Anytime I had to use a walkthrough was only because I got stuck on a spot. And when I found out what it was that I was missing, it made me feel dumb. Because of something so small as like interacting with like one little thing or, you didn't pick up this one little thing.
Same for me. But yeah, so that brings us to our scores. I don't know. I wrote down a number and now I'm questioning it a little bit, but...
Oh, me too. Me too.
Dude, before we even got on this call, I was texting Jim and I was like, I am so conflicted right now. Because I think for me, mainly, like, if I look at my bullet points of like pros and cons, because that's just kind of how I did my notes, my cons list, it dwarfs my pros list. Like, I think I might have had like 2 or 3 things written down for things that stuck out that I really liked about the game. But things I didn't like about the game, I easily had like 10 bullet points.
Yeah, it's really tough.
It's one of those cases where I have a score. I'll get to that in a bit. But since you beat the game and Jimmy made it a lot farther than I did in my time, it gives a new perspective on the game that I wasn't aware of. So now that I have that new perspective, it kind of really affects my score.
All right, well, I'll go first. With all the complaints and with, everything we've said, I still enjoyed playing the game. And I didn't have to play it for over 5 hours, but I did. You know, I could have played 2 or 3 hours and I probably would have got the point of the game, just like Mike did. So at the end of the day, I did have a positive experience. While, you know, a lot of the negatives are just negatives of the time and not necessarily this game specifically. So, like, working in those constraints of that time, this is a great game. And I'm going to give it a 7.5.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I thought about going higher, but I was kind of looking at our scores here. And I think getting into the 8s and above, I think if we had a few less complaints, I probably would have took it even higher. But I just had a good time playing it. And, you know, if there's a remake, I'll play it. Even if they put it on PlayStation, like as one of those like PS classics or whatever, I might even play it then. Like, it's just a fun game.
So I'll just go ahead and say my score right off the bat. And this is the original number I had. And it's actually the same as Jim's, a nice 7.5. Because Jim is absolutely correct, even though I do have a large list of like things I don't like about the game, it's hard to hold it against it because it is like an of the time thing. So it's like, I really have to take that into consideration with my score. And I had a fun time playing this game. I would go back and I would play it again, especially having beaten it and seeing that there's like a new game plus with like, you know, there's like, oh, there's like a special item. And then there's even like, well, I think once you get all the endings, there's another kind of like new game plus mode or something like that, where it's just like eradicate all the dinosaurs or something like that, where I'm like, oh, so I have to go through and kill all of them. So it's like, knowing that that's there makes me want to go back to the game already. You know, I'm a big survival horror fan, so it's kind of easy for me to give this game a high score just because I love the genre. But I tried to be critical with things because I didn't want to like purely give it a good score just based on like it's a game that is easy for me to like because I like the genre. Having, you know, this conversation, and I was kind of like questioning the score I gave it, but Jim kind of affirmed some things where he's just like, yeah, these are like of the time issues. You know, it's like you're going to find these issues in other games. And taking that into account, I don't think it really can affect the game too negatively for me because like I said, you're going to find this shit across the board. Yeah, no, fun game, good game. Yeah, I could use some work, but what game couldn't?
So I started my score off with a 9 from the beginning.
Wow.
It was very high. I was loving this game, having fun. Even parts where I was getting stuck on, I eventually solved it. I eventually got through that hurdle. They do make it a little bit difficult where you do have to think sometimes, but if you just look or wander around and read some stuff, you can figure it out. Even the part I got stuck on and quit, if I had more time before doing this show, I probably could have figured it out. It would have taken me a couple more hours probably, but I probably would have figured out what I was supposed to do next. With that said, the fact that you're only fighting raptors, and then with you guys saying, oh, you only get one more enemy that comes out, it just goes back to that Alone in the Dark thing where there's never enough variety to make it really fun in a sense. Like, it seems like the dinosaurs are secondary to the rest of the game. And the whole rest of the game is just this problem solving and trying to figure out where you're supposed to go. And then the dinosaurs are just a nuisance that you just kind of have to deal with sometimes. But with all that, I brought my score down to an 8. I feel like they could have done a lot of improvements. But for never playing these types of games, aside from Alone in the Dark, this trumps Alone in the Dark. This is amazing. So with that, our final score is a 7.66.
That puts it at number 4 now. So our updated ranking, here's the top 5, is Tony Hawk 1 at number 1, The Adventure of Little Ralph, Tony Hawk 2, Dino Crisis, and Blood Omen.
What did you guys give Tony Hawk 1?
The average was an 8.75.
That sounds about right.
I knew Kyle would question the Tony Hawk thing whenever we brought that up.
A bit of a, you know, somewhat hot take, but we thought Tony Hawk 1 was better than Tony Hawk 2. So
really,
Tony Hawk 2's average is an 8.25. Still very high. It's only a 0.5 difference, but
he's stunned.
I know, he's just like,
Did you guys know they made like a Dino Crisis 2?
Yes.
Yeah, it's on the PS1, isn't it?
I think it is actually, yeah.
I know Dino Crisis 3 is the one that sucks, and it's on like Xbox, I think.
I'm curious to see what they improve on in 2. Which is also another point of the show where we've only been playing the first of the games. So eventually we're going to get to the second ones, and doing that side-by-side comparison will be amazing to do apples to apples between the two games.
Yeah, I mean, I would also say Dino Crisis would be a good first game in survival horror for someone to play.
That's a good point, yeah.
Like, if you want to get into these games, like, this is the best first one I think you could play because it's not super hard. You can kind of just stumble your way through it if you really want to without looking at anything.
Yeah, and the fact that like the maps aren't too big, like Kyle was saying, it's the illusion that the maps are big without it actually being all that much. So it's very easy to navigate the world. Just gets very confusing.
Yeah, but that is obviously intentional.
Yeah.
All right, well, that is going to do it for us. Thank you so much for watching or listening. If you enjoyed this, please remember to like and subscribe as well as give us a rating on podcast services. We'll see you next week.
Bye.